Special Prosecutor of Ghana, Mr. Kisi Ajabin. Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Deputy Special Prosecutor, civil society organizations present here, members of the media, our guests. I welcome you to today's briefing, which I intend to make it brief. Today marks International Anti-Corruption Day as declared under the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. And so today I intend to give a little insight into what has transpired and what we will be doing from next year in respect of the suppression and repression of corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, on 24 June 2007, Ghana ratified the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which is the only legally binding universal anti-corruption instrument. In his foreword on the General Assembly resolution adopting the convention, Kofi Annan stated that corruption is an insidious plague that has a wide range of corrosive effects on societies. It undermines democracy and the rule of law, leads to violations of human rights, distorts markets, erodes the quality of life, and allows organized crime, terrorism, and other threats to human security to flourish. Unhappily, these words ring too forcefully in Ghana as corrupt practices debase our progress, and our performance on the Corruption Perception Index compiled by Transparency International has been marked by perennial underachievement. Yet, Ghana is taking remarkable steps in the quest to suppress and repress corruption. Establishment of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, the Economic and Organized Crime Office, and the Financial Intelligence Center bear testimony to this. The recent amendment of the Criminal Offenses Act under the Criminal Offenses Amendment Act 2020, Act 1034, upgrading corruption and corruption-related offenses from misdemeanors to second-degree felonies, is indicative of a reckoning of the destructiveness of corruption and a desire to stem the tide of such offenses by imposing stiffer sentences on offenders. Ghana made its most definitive statement on the strife against corruption with the passage of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959, which came into force on 2 January 2018 and established the Office of the Special Prosecutor, OSP, as the gold standard and flagship specialized independent anti-corruption agency in pursuance of the UN Convention, with the object of investigating and prosecuting specific cases of alleged or suspected corruption and corruption-related offenses in the public and in the private sector, recovering the proceeds of such acts by disgorging illicit and unexplained wealth and taking steps to prevent corruption. The notable advancement is that the OSP is fortified with the cure of the inadequacies of the existing anti-corruption agencies by being designed as a comprehensive anti-graft agency with investigative, prosecutorial, intelligence gathering, surveillance and counter-surveillance, police, national security, and revenue-generating powers. The OSP is thus a vital institution for economic development. The OSP derives its powers mainly from the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959, Office of the Special Prosecutor Regulations 2018, LI 2373, Office of the Special Prosecutor Operations Regulations 2018, LI 2374, and other laws bearing on the suppression and repression of corruption. In addition to taking its own initiative, the OSP also receives and acts on referrals of investigations of alleged corruption and corruption-related offenses from Parliament, the Auditor General, the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, the Economic and Organized Crime Office, and other public institutions. The office also receives and acts on complaints from private entities and individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, let me touch on the target persons of the OSP in its investigative and prosecutorial functions. It is very important, and they are as follows. 1, public officials. That is to say, persons who hold public office. That is, an office, the salaries and benefits of which are paid directly from the consolidated fund, the contingency fund, or directly out of monies provided by Parliament, and an office in a public corporation established entirely out of public funds or monies provided by Parliament. Second, target persons, politically exposed persons. These are persons who have been entrusted with prominent public functions in Ghana or in a foreign country or an international organization, such as political party officials, that is senior political party officials, government officials, judicial officials, military officials, or a person who is or has been an executive in a foreign country of a state-owned company, or a senior political party official in a foreign country, or an immediate family member or close associate of such persons. Third, target persons, private persons. And the fourth, legal persons, such as corporations, companies, organizations, associations, clubs, etc. It is important to also bring up the offenses under the mandate of the OSP. Sometimes there is some confusion as to what the OSP is mandated to investigate and prosecute or otherwise. The offenses the OSP is mandated to investigate and prosecute are classified as corruption and corruption-related, and they include the following. Please take note. Dishonestly receiving property, that is, where a person receives, buys, or assists in the disposal of property which the person knows has been obtained or appropriated by a crime, without intending to return the property to the owner. Extortion, that is, where a person obtains property from another person by means of threat of libel or slander, threat of prosecution for an offense, threat of detention, and any other form of threat not involving assault or harm to the person threatened. Using public office for profit, where a public officer corruptly or dishonestly abuses his or her office for private gain, or where a private person acts in collaboration with a public officer for the public officer to corruptly or dishonestly abuse his or her office for private gain. This is what you call bribery. There's another form of bribery, which is corruption of and by a public officer or juror. This is where a public officer or juror, in respect of his duties of office, directly or indirectly agrees or offers to permit his conduct as a public officer or juror to be influenced by a gift, a promise, or a prospect of valuable consideration, or where another person so corrupts a public officer or juror. The other bribery offense is corrupt promise by judicial officer or juror. This is where a person makes or offers to make an agreement with another person as to the judgment or verdict which that person will or will not give as a judicial officer or juror in a pending or future proceeding. Then we have corrupt selection of juror. That is where a person procures for that person or another person to be summoned, empaneled, or sworn as a juror, or endeavors to prevent a person from being summoned, empaneled, or sworn as a juror for the purpose of securing an undue advantage or disadvantage to a party to a judicial proceeding. Then we have corruption, intimidation, and personation in respect of election. And this is very dear to my heart. Where a person endeavors to influence the conduct of a voter in respect of an election by threat of an evil consequence to be caused to the voter or to any other person on account of the conduct of the voter, or seeks to corrupt a voter or impersonates another person in respect of an election. Then, one which is dearer to my heart, falsification of return at election, where a person, as a public officer charged with the counting of votes or the making of a return at a public election, willfully falsifies the tally of votes or makes a false return of the votes. Then we have withholding of public money by a public officer. That is where a public officer who is bound in that capacity to pay or account for money or a valuable thing, or to produce or give a document or any other thing up, fails to do so when that person is lawfully requested to do so. Then we come to public procurement offenses. That is where a person enters or attempts to enter into a collusive agreement or influences the procurement process to obtain an unfair advantage, or alters procurement documents to influence the outcome, or requests for unpermitted clarification. Then we have the umbrella offenses. These are classified under the law as existent offenses arising out of or consequent upon the above offenses I've enumerated. This may be in the nature of what we call predicate offenses. These are crimes that are components of other crimes. So, that is to say, an offense as a result of which proceeds have been generated that may become the subject of any of the above offenses. Then we have linked or related offenses. These are crimes that are either way or that may be charged jointly or in the alternative. Then we have antecedent offenses. These are crimes that precede or are prior to the above crimes. These existent offenses include, let me go through them quickly. Laundering of proceeds of crime, dearest to my heart. The acquisition, possession, or use of property or currency knowing at the time of receipt that such property or currency is the proceeds of crime. The conversion or transfer of property or currency knowing that such property or currency is the proceeds of crime for the purpose of concealing or disguising the illicit origin of the property or currency, or of helping any person who is involved in the commission of that offense to evade the legal consequences of his or her action. Then the concealment or disguise of the true nature, source, location, disposition, movement or ownership of or rights with respect to property or currency, knowing that such property or currency is the proceeds of crime. Then we also have illicit enrichment or unexplained wealth. That is, a significant increase in the assets of a person that he or she cannot reasonably explain in relation to his or her lawful income. That is to say, an inexplicable gap between a person's total wealth and their lawfully acquired wealth. Then we also have bribery in the private sector. We also have abuse of functions. And we have embezzlement, misappropriation, or other diversion of property or currency. Then, what is very typical in our society, influence peddling or trading in influence. Then, quickly, we have obstruction of the administration of justice. That is to say, the use of physical force, stress, or intimidation, promise, offering or giving of an undue advantage to induce false testimony, the use of physical force, stress, or intimidation to interfere with the exercise of official duties by a judge or a law enforcement official, and where a public officer refuses or fails without reasonable excuse to cooperate with the OSP when information is requested or lawful assistance is sought from that public officer, or where a person fails to comply with a lawful demand of the OSP, where a person fails to produce a document or provide information requested by the OSP, where a person fails to produce property or currency declared to be seized by the OSP, where a person conceals or attempts to conceal property or currency liable to seizure by the OSP, where a person knowingly furnishes false information to the OSP, where a person refuses to grant the OSP access to premises or refuses to submit to a search, where a person assaults an officer of the OSP in the performance of his or her functions, where a person obstructs an officer of the OSP from performing his or her functions, and where an officer of the OSP communicates confidential information to an authorized person or discloses the personal details of an informant to a third person without authority. The lecturer in me was coming out there. It is instructive to state that the OSP has the mandate to investigate and prosecute these offenses, whether or not the offenses were committed in Ghana or in a foreign country, so far as the act or conduct constitutes a crime in Ghana. The OSP, ladies and gentlemen, has completed a review of all the alleged cases of corruption and corruption-related offenses before it. Currently, the OSP is investigating 31 active cases, and it will, in due course, commence the prosecution in the courts of the cases it considers probatively strong. There is no case commenced by the OSP pending in the courts at the moment. I inherited one court case, that is the Republic against Mahama Ayariga and another, which I discontinued in October after a careful scrutiny of the available evidence led me to conclude that the Republic will be unable to prove its case on the standard of proof required in criminal cases, that is, proof beyond reasonable doubt. Let me also state that the assignment and full dedication by the government of a 10-story building at South Ridge, Accra, for the sole use of the OSP, and the steps taken and being taken by the Office of the President and the Chief of Staff in the establishment and maintenance of the OSP are highly commendable and a testament to a commitment to the fight against corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, upon my assumption of office on 5th August 2021 as the second Special Prosecutor of the Republic, I noticed that the OSP had not been operationalized, and it was without its own staff and necessary resources. The fight against corruption had, in effect, been thrown in reverse for 3 years. I immediately triggered the processes to set up and operationalize the office, to staff it with specialized trained personnel, and to fit it with the required material, resources, and equipment. By so doing, the fight against corruption has been resuscitated, and we will carry on the renewed fervor during my tenure in office. As the institution specifically tasked with taking steps to prevent corruption, I resolve that in the coming year, the OSP will institute and strengthen measures to prevent, suppress, and repress corruption more efficiently and effectively than has ever been done in this republic. This should portend hope that Ghana is taking concrete steps to drive down the incidence of corruption. I have commenced engagement with law enforcement and anti-corruption agencies, including the Attorney Generals, the National Security Secretariat, the Ghana Police Service, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, Economic and Organized Crime Office, and the Financial Intelligence Center. I have also opened insightful interactions and meetings with foreign and diplomatic missions and international organizations in accordance with our mutual legal assistance regime and that of the UN Convention. I have invited the participation and collaboration of anti-corruption civil society groups, non-governmental organizations, and community-based organizations, the media, and investigative journalists to support the work and operations of the OSP in our collective effort in combating corruption. I state with gratification that the response has been enthusiastic. Ladies and gentlemen, from January 2022, the OSP will institute as part of its Pressure for Progress drive, an annual Ghana Corruption League table to assess perceived levels of public sector corruption in the estimation of experts and business people. In aid of this, public agencies will be ranked against each other on a corruption barometer, and the results will be published every 9 December. We have commenced discussions with the local chapter of Transparency International, that is the Ghana Integrity Initiative, which is going to be our main strategic partner on this program. Ladies and gentlemen, the OSP from January 2022 would also require all public institutions, departments, agencies, and companies to prepare and submit to the OSP integrity plans intended at assessing deficiencies in their regulations, procedures, policies, guidelines, administration instructions, and internal control mechanisms to determine their vulnerability and exposure to corrupt practices, and the prescription of curative measures to manage such susceptibility to corruption and corruption-related offenses. I am also setting up internal control mechanisms at the OSP to prevent corruption at the OSP itself. The OSP would also carry out anti-corruption risk assessment and review from January 2020 of all major public contracts, legislation, and draft legislation. This is intended to avoid toxic deals and the prevalence of judgment debts and arbitration awards. The office would also undertake continuous education and information of the public and the publicizing of detected acts of corruption. The OSP would vigorously investigate and prosecute cases of alleged or suspected corruption and corruption-related offenses and recover proceeds of such offenses through property tracing of tainted property and currency, in line with our vision of rendering corruption a costly enterprise. On another score, I look forward to the provision of adequate funding and the necessary material resources as stipulated in Articles 6 and 36 of the UN Convention to carry out this most challenging and solemn mandate. I cannot help but state that without adequate funding and the provision of the necessary material resources, the good intentions of my staff and I would remain just good intentions with nothing concrete to show for it. As we mark International Anti-Corruption Day and Anti-Corruption Week, I invite all well-meaning Ghanaians, let's renew our mindsets, and collectively, let's help to turn the negative narrative of corruption to transform this republic and place it on a solid developmental track. On this score, we must draw on the wisdom of hindsight in our pursuit of a fairer society. We cannot continue on the path of see no evil, hear no evil. Let us expose the evil of corruption. Let us eschew corrupt practices, as we bear in mind that ours should be a life of live and let live in the national interest. We must transform our thinking and psyche from a ritualistic, gift-giving society marked by undeserved attainment of wealth to secure undue advantage in all spheres of life to one of merit-based rewards. This is our sure chance to curb corruption, and we cannot miss this opportunity. God bless us all. God bless Ghana.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You just heard the official message from the SP. It's now time for questions from the media. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Sami Dagon, and I'm your MC for today. So we'll take the first question from Elton John Broby from Multimedia Group Limited. Your question. Then after that, we'll take 3 in a row, and then SP answers, and then we take the next batch. So after Elton will be Wilberforce of Asase Radio. And
you indicated that
We'll take the next one from...
Maybe let me just answer you. Elton, thanks. The last one first. You know, in terms of investigation and prosecution, the Act is very clear that the board cannot interfere with the special prosecutor in that. So the special prosecutor can go on that without the board's input or otherwise. The board cannot come close to any matters involving investigation and prosecution of persons. But what I stated was that not that we're going to prosecute all the 31 cases. I said that we have 31 active cases before us now. We finished the entire review, and those that will take to court for prosecution will be what we believe are probatively strong in terms of the evidence to match up to prove beyond reasonable doubt. The others will advise ourselves in the national interest as to how to go about them. And, you know, putting things out there when you are not too sure whether you want to prosecute at this stage or not is that you may end up destroying people's reputations for life. Because immediately you mention that you are investigating this person or you are investigating that person, immediately there is a negative attachment to the persons. And that is why I have refrained from touching on the specific cases.
So there was a second question as to how the OSP board is absence, whether it's hampering your work or not.
Oh, I thought it was specifically in relation to investigations and prosecutions. But you meant generally. Well, generally, the other aspects it's hampering our work because, especially in respect of HR and staffing issues and policy-wise, without the board, we are disabled from doing a lot of these things. So we hope the board will be interested soon so that we can proceed with the comprehensive functions under the Act and the allies.
We take the next question from Wilberforce.
Okay, so, Prosecutor, you alluded to the fact that funding is an essential component that will affect your work. Now, I want to find out, the funding that was allocated to you in the immediate budget that is yet to be appropriated, is it sufficient for purposes of your activities, especially when you have indicated that you intend to recruit up to 250 people? We know that you need to do that together with the board, which is not in place, so I will not ask that. But I'm talking about funding directly. Apart from direct funding from the state, are there any other avenues with which you are able to get funding?
The question is multifaceted. This is it. Wilberforce. Without money, we can't do anything. We will be reduced to writing long letters without any force. Because we need money for everything, especially our operations. And the question as to whether what was allotted to the ASP is sufficient, I would say, generally in Ghana, nothing is sufficient. And what was put there, I have seen. It doesn't match up to my expectations. But I cannot give up. I'll continue pushing the envelope. I see things written on paper, but I'll keep asking and I'll keep pushing so that we can get what we require to establish and operationalize this office well. Mind you, I keep saying, every opportunity I get, I'll hop on it. When I inherited the office, there was nothing there. There was nothing. Yes, established under law, but its operationalization was zero. And so, to do this, we need the resources to put things in place. The various divisions ought to be established on the ground: finance, administration, operations, investigation, prosecutions, strategy, communications, asset recovery and management. All these have to be instituted. And in respect of all this, without money, we cannot do it. Kisejabin can't do it. So we need the money. That is why I said that I'm looking forward to it, because I do not see it as a closed case. I will keep pushing, we will keep pushing, and we'll keep engaging so we get the necessary resources to fund our operations. There was one I think I'm missing. You know, maybe I shouldn't say this, but strategy-wise, I'm not going to tell you who I've recruited or who I haven't recruited or the number of people I've recruited and all that. Yes, you indicated that I said 250. It's not really my statement. It's from the 2019 Appropriation Act. That is the staff, the commencement base of the OSP. In the wisdom of Parliament, that is what is required to establish it from the onset. And if I'm starting from zero, it means my work is cut out for me and I need to double up. And I need a board to do that also. So,
you mentioned media house.
He's discriminating. He knows only 2 names.
All right, so thank you. I'm Richard Watson from Dennis Law News. And first of all, I'd like to find out concerning your annual corruption league table. You said from January 2022 you're going to do that. And is it just going to be publishing the results and ranking, or what else do you want to do apart from just publishing? Secondly, on your internal control mechanism, as in your outfit, can you please share with us what are some of the things that you think you are doing in your side to check us in terms of internal control? And
sorry, say the last part again.
You mentioned internal control.
Yes, mechanism. The last part of what you just said.
I want to find out what you are doing. What are the exact things that you are doing in terms of the internal control mechanism? And also, you mentioned something about election, falsification of election results, which you mentioned was your interest area. I would like to find out how are you going to do that, because we know the nature of election in Ghana, and how do you intend to? And finally, for the funding.
You are eating too much. All right, proceed. That's no. All
right, so on the funding, you all know it's a challenge. So do you have any plans of looking to international or private persons to support, or do you even have the power to do so? Thank you very much, sir.
My name is Vida Esieju from the Finder newspaper. Sir, I'll commend you for your achievements so far. Well, personally, I'm impressed. It looks like you've put in the foundations well laid for you to start. My question is, you mentioned that from January 2022, there are a series of activities that you'd want to do. I want to find out, haven't you had any interference so far? Prior to the resignation of your predecessor, he mentioned that there were some interference with his work. So far, since he started office, have you had all the support? Haven't you had any interference? Then my second question. Okay, please take this. I'll come back again. You may answer my second question.
Okay. Should I do hers first? All right. Let me take the ladies first. Any interference so far? By that, no. And I stated in an interview somewhere that I do not really fear, if you are referring to political interference, I do not really fear that because before I took up this position, there are some assurances I escheated from the powers that be, and it's not everything I can say in public, but I've gone under, especially with traditional rulers. That is where I fear most.
Okay.
Yeah, I've gone around and I've told them something to tell their royals, that if any one of them shows up at my doorstep, I keep saying. So that is resonating. I'm not doing it publicly, because I can't do that publicly, but that is resonating. It's the sides. That is where I fear most. The interference, church, friends, family. I have a family. Imagine there's a family meeting and someone has committed a corruption or corruption-related offense, and my family head is begging on the person's behalf. That is more difficult than if, for instance, the president picks up a call to say, oh, this is a political person, look the other way. That I do not fear. That I do not fear at all. And support, as I'm receiving, by and large, I'm receiving the support that I need. As I said, the commendable efforts of the office of the president, especially the chief of staff. She has been She has been very, very helpful in steps she has taken, steps she's continuing to take. Mind you, at this stage, there's still a little bit of a marriage because it is still being set up. I would have wished by now, as I'm coming in, it would have been set up so that the office wouldn't still need to tie a bit up to these institutions. What, you remember the second question?
Yes, please.
No, let me go to him first.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Because he has a laundry list from Dennis Law. The corruption league table is going to follow. We don't have to reinvent things. It's going to follow the format of Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. And beyond the publication, of course, that is a thread of preventing corruption. We also have several mandates: investigation, prosecution. In the working that leads to the publication of this table, if we come across any case that is corruption or corruption related, we are going to tackle them. But as I said, this publication of the corruption barometer is intended to put us all on our toes. That if you are in charge of a public agency and persistently your organization is pulling the shorter end of the straw in terms of corruption and corruption-related issues, then it supposes that something awry is going on in your organization and you need to sit up. It will generate some conversation, and we hope with that we can change our mindsets as to how to operate in the public sector. Talking about election results, we're going to have agents all over. We're going to follow all pink sheets. We're going to follow all collation results. It has to end somewhere. And specifically, it is the mandate of the OSP to ensure that these things occur. So as we follow, any case that, it's not as if we're witch hunting. It's not as if we're praying for people to do that. We wish that no one will engage in these evils. But any presiding officer, any returning officer who is minded to alter results or to willfully misstate the results that actually been obtained at the polling stations should know that we will be coming for them to prosecute them. And then you talked about funding. You see, by law, our funding should come from several places. The main is from public resources, the government. And then we also have our own internally generated funds, which is the asset recovery part. But you know, this is a chicken and egg situation. If we are not established well to go after deviants and offenders to disgorge illicitly acquired wealth, we will not be able to do it. So, the systems that are required in order for us to do this, that is what we are pushing for, and we are getting somewhere. We are not there yet, but we're getting somewhere, at least. The indications so far, by and large, we will be able to do a bit. And if we get these resources by taking this illicit wealth from the system into the national coffers, there is a formula under the law for distribution. So 10% goes to the Attorney General. I know my brother and friend, the Attorney General, is waiting for his 10%. I was telling him yesterday, well, he should help me to be able to disgorge these this illicitly gotten wealth, so I can give him his 10%. 10% also goes to institutions that are relevant to our work. 30% goes to the OSP's operation itself, and I'm required to pay 50% into the consolidated fund. So the OSP has been designed to be a revenue generator. We hope that one day we will get to a point where the Ministry of Finance would actually rely on the OSP to balance its budget, because that is the idea. But I will keep saying, we have to be established well first to be able to perform this important function. You got a second question?
Please, sir. The first special prosecutor, some Ghanaians described the outfits, not just the person, but the office, as a dog that can bark but can't bite.
Sorry, say that again.
Some Ghanaians were of the view that the first OSP's office was like a dog that can bark, but can't bite. Now, my question is, considering all the groundwork you've done so far, for Ghanaians to feel the impact of your office, like how we are feeling the impact of our new IGP, how many years should Ghanaians wait so we can feel that, yes, our OSP's outfit is really doing the job it's asked it to do?
We are not waiting for years. We are working. We've started work. And as I said, we are facing several mandates in our object, and some that is intelligence gathering, some that is counter-surveillance, some that has serious national security implications. These things, ideally, we cannot reveal them because they are in the national interest, national security. We are doing them, especially together with national security and other agencies. And then, when it comes to investigations, I told you earlier, we have 31 active cases. So we are not waiting for years. But I said, arresting someone, it's not the same as going to court, prosecuting the person. So I can come to a person's residence or office, arrest them. But is that the end? What we are looking for in order to be able to bite well, not just scraping, but biting well, is that we have to go to court to prosecute some of these cases, which we think would shore up to the standard of proof required in criminal cases. And we are in the process of doing that. At the right time, when we go to court, you will know. But your name is Vida, right?
Yes, sir.
Vida, we are not waiting for a number of years. We started working from 5th August, and we're still working.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sir, I can barely hear you.
My name is Hansen Ajiman. I work with City FM, City TV. Right. So on the issue about the cases you're investigating, the Act mandates the office to half yearly publish a report on its work, which include things that they've been investigating. It was 6 months after the former special prosecutor resigned that you were appointed. 4 months after that, you were sworn into office. And currently, if I'm not wrong, I've not been able to access the website of the office for some time now. Can you give us an update on some of these reports and when?
Some of these?
Reports. The half-yearly reports that the office is mandated to publish on the website, and when we should expect one. And then again, you indicated that from January 2022, you intend to undertake anti-corruption risk assessment on major contracts by public institutions. The issue about EJAPA, your predecessor did a anti-corruption risk assessment on it. It came up in the 2022 budget, government indicating that they intend to retable it. Should we take this as a commitment also to perhaps do an anti-corruption risk assessment on the EJAPA deal if it is retabled?
I was hoping I wouldn't have to go into this website matter, but a little bit of it. Maybe it's time the public should know about it. The website which was there before my assumption of office on 5th August 2021 was not the website of the OSP. It was masquerading as the website of the office of the OSP because it had been put together by some private individuals who were phantom individuals and you couldn't find them. But we traced all the way to the United States of America as to where the domain name was purchased and all that. And we had to involve the Department of Justice of the United States and all that to have it shut down right from August. So it was a very tough battle, because from the end of where the domain name was purchased, their point was simple. That's freedom of speech, and someone came to purchase a domain name. And if you looked at that domain name, it wasn't .gov.gh. It was some very weird formulation. So when my name came up and I was going to be vetted, I started taking interest in the website, and I noticed that no, it was unusual. And indeed, when I came into office that very first week, actually the very first day, it became very obvious that there was a problem with the website. In terms of the website, we are building it from scratch, because, as I said earlier, there was no website. It was something that was masquerading as the Office of the Special Prosecutor website. So it's being built from scratch, and it will be up soon. By looking at the various reports, you said yourself that it's half yearly. At the appropriate time, we'll release the next report. You know, you also touched on the fact that there was a gap between November 2020 and August 5, 2021, when I came in. And so all these things would have to be reworked and things put in their right perspective before the next report to come out. But I cannot give you the details of the report we are yet to publish. Sorry, there was one, Ejapa. Sir, if you notice, I have refrained from discussing specific cases, yes, and it is intentional. But I said something, that from January 2022, one of the things that we're going to do is a corruption risk assessment of all major public contracts. And if it is a major public contract, it is going to fall under our purview of assessing it in terms of its corruption risk. None will escape us. Yes. Thank you.
Right, so moving on with TV3. Earlier in November, you invited the new MC nominee to your office over some allegations of...
I hope you're not going to go into the merits of the case. Right, thanks.
He was invited to your office. A lot of Ghanaians were interested, but after that, there hasn't been any details provided as with regards whether the investigation is still ongoing or the OSP has discontinued or doesn't have interest in the case any longer. What's the current status of that case? And secondly, there's been a lot of conversations about causing financial loss to the state with regards the roads minister and the suspension of collection of road tolls. The question is whether the OSP is interested in a matter like this going forward.
Let me take the second one. You know, causing financial loss is not directly under the mandate of the OSP. It goes to the Attorney General. That's why I took the trouble to table all the offenses that the OSP is mandated to investigate and prosecute. But in respect of causing financial loss, if it so happens that there is some corruption or corruption-related aspects of the causing of financial loss, then we will be very much interested. This is what I'm saying. It is not every time that someone causes financial loss to the state that invokes a corruption aspect. The person may have taken some reckless business decisions. That does not necessarily mean that the person was corrupt. But there are some cases of causing financial loss too that ring in forcefully an issue of corruption. If it is the fact that the person was being corrupt or the person was being corrupted or some corruption-related aspects that led to causing financial loss, then I will be carving out that from the Attorney General to prosecute. Please, you get a distinction. Yes. Then grabbing. We invited him in November. We are in December. In legal investigation and prosecution, that is just like a day. We are still on it. And here I'll say, I think I have his permission. The IGP has been very helpful in this regard. The police and the OSP are working together forcefully in respect of this case. And so, indeed, the docket itself has been handed over by the IGP to the OSP, and we are in the middle of the investigations. Sir, merely inviting a person to the OSP doesn't mean that the very next day the person is going to put before court. You invite the persons, you take their statements if they want to talk. The law says they can keep their silence if they so wish. If they want to talk, you take their statements. If they want to give statements, you still send your people down to the ground. Several persons were mentioned, assemblymen. The allegations was that he was chasing some assemblymen for alleged bribe money and all that. You have to do a very thorough investigation in respect of all these persons to come to the conclusion whether you have a strong case to prosecute. So in answer to your question, we are still investigating. The police has handed over their side of the investigation to us, but we are working with them in respect of that. So when we come to a conclusion, it will be publicized as to what we intend to do or otherwise, just like our conclusion in the Mahama Yariga case, when we came to the conclusion that it was unnecessary to go on because there was no evidence in that regard. If we decide, if we see that in law there is probative evidence to go on with that case, we will put them before court. It's not just one person, mind you. We'll put them before court if we so decide. So we're still on the investigation, sir.
Emmanuel is a veteran.
Sorry, Emmanuel is?
He's a veteran journalist.
Oh, okay.
I'm topping you up.
He's still discriminating.
My name is Emmanuel K. I work for Ghana Business News.
Right.
I'm wondering why the OSP would want to publish a corruption barometer when you have the TIs, you have the GIIs, the Apple barometer does a similar thing and captures, the perceptions of people of corruption and who is corrupt and all that. For an institution that requires resources to investigate and prosecute corruption, wouldn't you rather want to concentrate your energies on the most important things? In my view, I'm wondering why you think that publishing a corruption league table in Ghana would make any difference as compared to actually investigating and prosecuting. Thank you.
Thanks, Emmanuel. I do not see one mandate to be more important than the other. In the wisdom of Parliament, it says we should investigate, we should prosecute, we should recover assets, and we should prevent corruption. It's one aspect of preventing corruption. So if we say we're waiting for resources before we take up one of our major functions, so we have 4 major functions. We cannot say we're waiting for resources before we take up one function. We cannot also say that one function is more important than the other. This is a flagship. It is going to be our own localized CPI. We cannot sit down for TI to do it for it. And even in their case, it is more general. But here, it is going to be naming agency after agency and going into the perception and respect of that agency. It is for our own good. It is for our own betterment. That I said we want to change the psyche, mindsets. With that, some critical conversation would be formed in respect of how to change things. For instance, if we zero in on one agency and we come to the conclusion that it is based on this or that this agency is not functioning the way it's supposed to function, then we would have some foundation to be able to change the nature of the organization. And say, mind you, we are going to dovetail it together with what I said will also be requiring from public agencies, that is the integrity plans, in order to block the loopholes, the avenues for corruption. So these are all going together in a major drive to prevent corruption.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Special Prosecutor.
Thank you. I think I can resume my seat now.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. I think that if there are no more questions, we will call it a day. The Special Prosecutor is mindful of time, and so we will call it off for today. Thank you all very much for coming. There is some what we call refreshment outside. We thank you for coming. And on behalf of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, we will say that we will be coming to you again when there is information to be given to the public. Thank you all. Please, we'll be running copies of his speech so that everyone will get it.
Office of the Special Prosecutor, a lawyer like his age, and any on his and for Shemuna, what church, choir, or faso, a two catas, and a sosa, Sebea, and Beaka, send the office Yabedi. We will say catas, Shana, say prohibited the Hokrana, on share, many crown share, and what was I and your Pesoe, Nimum, choir. One a bear sacrifice share, or one bed, a dome, supposition in the end, a sicar, only Nipan court, no more prosecuting, no more Bolico, Nasa, a bono, a Momuniana, a sicar, say, near Umbina, fuel by the honor, Quayom Bafaso, Achichimu, and then also or the other gram. And he said, we will be a secretary, Udi Muntin, my, and Ranunia Marina, but your money now. KOFI TV so me din ene na nasifa ho bobo na da mo ene NSS se enam omudwumadi a omutimi edi ne kama ene nam so ema etimi e de sa ensentropho nhia mu ebrem yeda mase me mfomusi a yenkra mo na ne next one also no ye be sign e de abrem yakram.